All right, so we're diving into this pile of info on Glenmark Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
We've got financials for Q2,
Mm.
a whole investor presentation, even a letter to the stock exchange.
Yeah, it's a pretty complete look at where they are as of September 30th, 2024.
Right.
Not just performance, but also kind of how they're thinking about the future.
Exactly. So today, let's try to figure out what's really important in all of this.
Yeah.
First off, these Q2 FY25 results came out November 14th.
Yeah, that's right. And it's important to note that these aren't just preliminary numbers.
Right.
They've been reviewed by Glenmark's audit committee and approved by their board of directors.
Okay.
Also, their auditors did a limited review, which is basically another check.
So these numbers have been vetted, which is good. Now I see we've got standalone and consolidated figures.
Yeah.
Sometimes that confuses people.
Good point.
Yeah.
So standalone is just Glenmark itself.
Okay.
Consolidated includes all their subsidiaries.
So it's like the whole family picture.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So big picture consolidated revenue from operations for Q2 FY25 was Rs 34,338 million.
Yeah.
A 7.1% jump compared to last year.
Right.
Sounds good, but revenue is only part of the story, right?
Absolutely. What matters is how that revenue turns into profit.
Right.
And this is where it gets interesting. Their consolidated profit after tax PAT is Rs 3,545 million.
Okay.
Might not seem like much on its own, but it gives us a PAT margin of 10.3%.
Okay.
Compared to the negative 5.6% margin they had in Q2 last year, that's a huge turnaround.
Wow. Negative to double-digit positive in a year.
Yep.
I'm guessing they really tightened things up.
You're spot on. Their EBITDA margin also jumped to 17.5%, up from 14.4% last year.
Okay.
EBITDA basically shows how well they're running the business.
Right.
So that increase means they're managing costs and you may making more profit from every rupee.
Got it. Okay, let's break this down by region.
Okay.
Starting with India, it seems like they're doing great there.
Definitely a highlight for them. India grew 13.9% year over year. That's more than 1.5 times the growth of the whole Indian pharmaceutical market.
That's significant.
And it's pushed them up to 13th place in the market with a 2.22% share.
So they're not just riding the wave, they're outpacing it.
Exactly.
What's driving that success in India?
A few factors.
Okay.
They've been very focused on cardiology and dermatology.
Makes sense.
Those are growing areas.
Right.
And they've launched some successful products there like LyreFit.
Okay.
And Jabriois, which is a collaboration with Pfizer.
Oh, right. That partnership.
Plus their consumer care division.
Yeah, the over-the-counter stuff.
Exactly. They're seeing 15% growth in primary sales there, too.
So it's a mix of smart products, high-growth areas, and leveraging that Pfizer connection.
Exactly.
But what about North America? Their revenue dipped a little?
True. North America is down 1.2% year over year.
Right.
They've had some challenges there, but they're not giving up. In fact, they're putting a lot into their injectable products. They've got 8 injectables on the market and plan to launch 3 or 4 more next quarter.
So they're really focusing on injectables.
Yeah.
Are they targeting any specific areas within North America?
Respiratory products seem to be a key focus.
Okay.
They've filed 2 ANDAs for generic nasal sprays.
Okay.
Another one for a generic version of Floventi.
For asthma.
Right. And they've got a bunch more NDA applications waiting for FDA approval.
Sounds like they're setting up for a comeback.
Yeah.
All right. Europe looks much better.
Yeah. Europe is doing 14.6% revenue growth across all their key markets there.
That's solid growth.
A big driver is their branded respiratory portfolio, especially Ryaltris.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask about that. It's a global product for them.
Exactly. 41 markets and counting.
And they partnered with Hikma to distribute it in the U.S.
That's right.
Speaking of global, what's happening in the rest of the world? Latin America, the Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, all of that.
It's a mixed bag there. Overall revenue is down 4.1% this quarter.
I see they're ranked second in the overall pharmaceutical market in Kenya.
Yeah, they're doing well in some areas.
And they just launched Ryaltris in Mexico, too.
Right, so some bright spots, despite some challenges.
Makes sense. Okay, let's talk innovation. Glenmark is known for being strong in R&D.
Yeah, they are.
What's the latest there?
They're definitely committed to R&D. They spent Rs 2,279 million this quarter, which is 6.6% of their revenue.
Wow, that's a big chunk.
One exciting development is their novel biologic asset, ISB 2001.
Okay.
It's being developed by their subsidiary Ichnos Glenmark Innovation, or IGI.
IGI, okay.
It's showing a lot of promise for treating multiple myeloma.
Multiple myeloma is tough to treat any progress. There's a big deal.
It is.
What's so special about this ISB 2001? How does it work?
It's what's called a trispecific antibody,
Okay.
meaning it binds to 3 different targets at the same time.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
A very targeted approach. The phase 1 trial results have been very promising.
Re-
Glenmark is going to present those findings at the American Society of Hematology meeting in December.
Okay, so something to keep an eye on. I also saw something about IGI working on Treat-In and Beat platforms.
Yeah.
What are those all about?
Those are the platforms IGI uses to develop these new cancer therapies.
Okay.
TREAT stands for Trispecific Engagement by Antibodies based on the T-cell receptor.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
And BEAT stands for Bispecific Engagement by Antibodies based on the T-cell receptor.
So basically, they're engineering antibodies to be much more precise and effective.
Right. Instead of going after just one target on a cancer cell, they're hitting multiple targets.
That's fascinating.
Makes it much harder for the cancer to evade treatment.
Wow, it sounds like they're really on the cutting edge.
They are. And beyond their internal R&D, they're also looking for partnerships.
Right. We talked about their collaborations with Pfizer for Jabrius and Hikma for Ryaltris. Any other big partnerships in the works?
They just signed a licensing deal with Jiangsu Alphamab Biopharmaceuticals and 3D Medicines.
For a drug called envafolimab.
And what is that?
It's a PD-L1 inhibitor, a type of immunotherapy that helps the body's immune system fight cancer.
Those are some big names in pharma.
Yeah.
What's the plan for this envafolimab?
They're aiming to file for approval in over 20 markets next fiscal year,
Wow.
with the first launch expected in fiscal year 2026.
Okay.
Envafolimab is already approved in China for some solid tumors.
Right.
So they're hoping to build on that success globally.
All right, so a lot happening on the partnership front. Now, taking a step back, what's Glenmark's overall game plan? What are their goals for FY25?
Well, they've laid out some ambitious objectives.
Like what?
They want to hit a double-digit PAT margin.
So they're serious about profitability.
Definitely. They're also targeting consolidated revenue of ARDIS, 135,000 to 140,000 million.
Significant growth.
Yeah.
What about R&D? Are they still committed to that?
Absolutely. They plan to invest 7% to 7.25% of their sales back into R&D.
That's a lot.
And they're aiming for an EBITDA margin of around 19%.
Right, we talked about that. Shows their focus on efficiency.
Yeah.
Finally, they've allocated Rs 7,000 million for consolidated CapEx.
Probably for expansion in manufacturing.
Right.
So they're putting their money where their mouth is. Before we move on, there's one thing in the financials that I wanted to ask about.
Yeah, what's that?
These exceptional items. What are those?
Good catch. Those are one-time events that affected their financials this quarter.
Like what?
For example, they sold a 75% stake in their subsidiary Glenmark Life Sciences Ltd.
Right.
to Nirma Limited, and that's reflected in both the standalone and consolidated figures.
Right, and there was also that settlement with the U.S. Department of Justice.
About their pricing practices.
Yeah, and I think some charges related to their Monroe facility.
Right. It's important to understand these exceptional items because they give a fuller picture.
But they're not necessarily typical of their ongoing business.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of their performance, regional strengths, weaknesses, their focus on innovation plans for the future.
Yeah, quite a bit.
What are your main takeaways so far?
I'd say their strong performance in India,
Yep, definitely.
driven by good product choices and that Pfizer partnership,
Right.
and their clear commitment to R&D.
With ISB 2001 and the Trita and Beat platforms.
Pushing the limits of cancer treatment.
Exactly.
And they're using partnerships to expand globally while aiming for good financial performance and efficiency.
I agree. It seems like they've got a solid plan for the future.
Yeah.
Now, this raises a big question for me.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that given how strong Glenmark is in these emerging markets like India and their focus on these cutting-edge therapies,
Right.
how might they use all of that to tackle unmet medical needs, especially in those parts of the world?
Yeah, it's a great question to think about as we go deeper.
Yeah.
And it really highlights something I've noticed in all this data.
What's that?
Glenmark's not just reacting to the market. They're making some bold moves to shape their own future.
Absolutely. We see that in their regional strategies. For example, their success in India. That's not just luck. They've really zeroed in on cardiology and dermatology.
Huge demand there.
Exactly. And that partnership with Pfizer for Jabrius,
Yeah.
that's not just about the product itself. It's about tapping into Pfizer's network.
Their distribution and expertise.
Exactly.
It's like they're playing chess, thinking several moves ahead.
Uh-huh.
And it seems like they're using that same strategic thinking in each region.
Right.
In North America, they're doubling down on injectables.
Yeah, more complex to manufacture.
Right, in respiratory products,
Yeah,
a market where they see a chance to grab share.
makes sense.
And in Europe, they're building on that success of Ryaltris
Yeah,
to establish a strong brand.
exactly. They're adapting to each market, which is crucial for any global pharma company.
Right, it's not one size fits all.
Definitely. Yeah.
Let's dig deeper into the financials,
Right,
specifically their profitability.
right.
We touched on it, but it's worth unpacking.
Yeah,
That jump in their EBITDA margin is impressive.
it is.
From 14.4% last year to 17.5% this year. Yep. For our listeners who aren't finance experts, can you explain that in plain English?
Sure. EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Right.
It basically strips away all the accounting stuff
Right.
and shows how efficiently a company is running its core operations.
Got it.
A higher EBITDA margin usually means they're managing costs well
Right.
and making more profit from each sale.
Makes sense.
So that jump from 14.4% to 17.5% means Glenmark is getting more efficient and deprofitable.
And the PA margin?
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
It went from a loss last year to a 10.3% profit margin this year.
Right. The PA margin, or profit after tax margin,
Okay.
is the ultimate profitability measure. It
Yeah.
tells you how much profit they keep for every rupee of revenue.
After all the expenses and taxes.
Exactly. So going from negative to over 10% is a clear sign of a turnaround.
Now remember those exceptional items.
Yeah.
The sale of their stake in Glenmark Life Sciences and the settlement with the U.S. Department of Justice.
Right.
Those had a big impact on their financials, right?
They did. It's always important to look at those one-off events when analyzing financials.
Yeah.
They can distort the numbers and make it hard to see the underlying business.
Like try to judge a restaurant based on one meal where the power went out
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and the chef had to improvise.
Exactly. You need the bigger picture.
Right. Speaking of the bigger picture, let's talk about their commitment to R&D.
Yeah.
They're clearly not just churning out generics. They're investing in new therapies.
Absolutely.
Their R&D spending is significant.
It is.
And it's not just the amount, it's what they're focusing on.
Right.
Like that presentation at the American Society of Hematology meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Data on ISB 2001, their potential treatment for multiple myeloma.
That's a bold move. Multiple myeloma is really tough to treat.
Yeah.
Current therapies often stop working.
Right.
And patients desperately need new options.
Absolutely.
If ISB 2001 works in trials, it could be huge, not just for Glenmark, but for patients worldwide.
And they're not stopping there. They're developing those treat and beat platforms.
Yeah.
Essentially engineering platforms for new cancer treatments.
Right. Those platforms are incredibly innovative. Remember ISB 2001 being a tri-specific antibody. That's what the Trita platform does.
Okay.
Creating antibodies that can bind to multiple targets.
Making them way more effective.
Exactly.
Like a guided missile.
Yeah, zeroing in on the cancer's weak points. It's amazing how they're pushing the boundaries.
I know. And they're not doing it alone. They're partnering with other companies.
Right, to accelerate research and go global.
We talked about Pfizer and Hikma.
Yeah, yep.
But they're also working with Jiangsu Alphamab Biopharmaceuticals and 3D Medicines.
Exactly. Collaboration is key in today's pharma world.
Like assembling a team of all-stars.
Each with their own strengths.
Right. And it's not just about the science.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking about how to get these treatments to patients.
Especially in emerging markets where access can be limited.
That's crucial. Glenmark has a strong presence in those markets.
They do?
And they're using that to bring affordable, high-quality treatments to people who need them.
It's not just about profit. It's about making a difference.
It's easy to get lost in the numbers and the science.
Yeah.
But it's all about helping patients.
Absolutely.
Making a real impact.
Right. And that brings us to another part of Glenmark's operations.
Which is?
Corporate governance.
Okay.
They have a really strong system to ensure ethical and responsible decisions.
That's important for any company, but especially in pharma.
Right, where trust is everything.
It's about doing business the right way.
With transparency, accountability, and integrity.
Like a moral compass guiding them.
Exactly. Now, looking ahead, Glenmark has set some ambitious goals for FY25.
Right.
They've been very specific about their financial targets.
Like what?
Double-digit PAT margin revenue of Rs. 135,000 to 140,000. EBITDA margin around 19%.
Okay.
All signs that they're focused on sustainable, profitable growth.
And they're backing it up with investments in R&D, global expansion, and manufacturing.
Exactly. They're firing on all cylinders.
They are. They're also being strategic with their product portfolio.
How so?
Focusing on specialty and complex generics.
Yeah, less crowded. higher profit margins.
And their move into innovative therapies like ISB 2001 shows they're not afraid to take risks
Calculated risks for sure.
to get those breakthrough results
Right. It's a smart strategy. They're diversifying their offerings, expanding their capabilities,
and building a strong foundation for the long term.
while staying true to their mission of helping patients.
Which leads to a question investors often ask.
What's that?
What are the risks and challenges Glenmark might face?
Yeah, that's a critical question.
Because every company faces headwinds.
Especially in pharma, it's such a complex and constantly changing industry.
One big challenge is pricing pressure.
Definitely. We see it everywhere, especially in generics.
Right, as more competitors enter, prices go down, and that can hurt profits.
Glenmark will need to be smart about pricing and showing the value of their products.
And then there's the regulatory environment.
Always changing.
Getting new drugs approved is a long and expensive process.
It is.
There's always a risk of delays.
Right, which could impact launches in revenue.
And let's not forget technology.
Oh, yeah.
Huge factor.
AI, big data, personalized medicine. It's all changing healthcare.
Glenmark will need to invest in those areas to stay competitive.
But despite those challenges, I think Glenmark is pretty adaptable.
I agree. They've overcome challenges before.
Right.
They have a strong leadership team, a resilient culture, and they're not afraid to make big moves.
They're not sitting still. They're always innovating, expanding, finding new ways to create value.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a broader question.
Okay, what is it?
What role might Glenmark play in shaping the future of healthcare?
It's a big question.
It is, but it's worth thinking about.
We're at a turning point in healthcare.
Yeah.
Aging population, rising costs, growing demand for new treatments.
How can a company like Glenmark help address all that?
Right.
Well, one way is through their commitment to affordable generics.
Makes sense.
That's so important for access to medicine, especially in developing countries.
Where resources are limited, right? By offering good quality generics at lower prices, they're helping millions of people.
And their move into innovative therapies, especially in oncology,
Yeah.
could bring new hope to patients with serious illnesses.
If treatments like ISB 2001 are successful, they could really change lives.
And they're embracing digital technology,
Definitely.
telemedicine, digital therapeutics, things that can improve care and make it more efficient.
It's like they're thinking holistically, not just about drugs, but about the whole healthcare system.
Improving outcomes, expanding access,
Yeah.
ultimately making the world healthier.
Exactly. They're not just a pharma company. They're a healthcare innovator.
I like that.
Yeah.
And as we move towards our final segment,
Yeah.
where we'll answer some of your questions,
Right.
I think it's important to remember something we often overlook.
What's that?
The human side of all this.
Ah,
Behind the numbers, the partnerships, the
that's
science,
all about people.
the researchers who spend their lives searching for cures,
The doctors and nurses on the front lines giving care.
all the people working behind the scenes.
Manufacturing, logistics, administration.
Everyone plays a role in getting these medicines to people.
It's a reminder that business is about people.
Collaboration, dedication, a shared desire to make a difference.
Glenmark isn't just a company. It's a community of talented, passionate people.
Working towards a common goal.
And in our final segment, we'll answer some of your key questions about Glenmark's future.
Questions like, how do they compare to their competitors?
Mm-hmm.
And what role might they play in shaping healthcare?
We'll tackle those and more when we come back for the last part of our deep dive.
Welcome back. We've covered so much about Glenmark Pharmaceuticals, their financials, their global plans, their big push into innovation.
Yeah, it's been quite a deep dive.
It has. Now let's shift gears a bit and try to answer some questions that you, our listener, might have.
Yeah, the big picture questions.
Right, the ones that help us see where Glenmark fits in the whole healthcare world. So first, the question on everyone's mind.
Okay.
What does the future hold for Glenmark? Time to gaze into the crystal ball.
Haha. Well, predicting the future is always tough.
Especially in pharma.
Right. It's constantly changing. But from what we've seen, Glenmark seems to be in a good position.
They've got a solid base, a proven track record, and a clear strategy.
Yeah.
But the pharmaceutical world is super competitive.
It is.
How do they stack up against their rivals, both in generics A&D against those big brand name drug makers?
It's a tough landscape for sure. On the generic side,
Right.
they're up against huge companies as well as smaller, more agile ones.
Okay.
But Glenmark's focus on these specialty and complex generics gives them an advantage.
How so?
These aren't your typical Me Too drugs.
Right.
They often require more specialized manufacturing
Okay.
and face less competition, which could mean higher profits.
Interesting. And on the branded side,
Yeah.
They're relatively new to that game,
They are.
but they're not backing down from the big players.
Nope.
Their investment in innovative therapies, like in oncology, is a sign of their ambition.
Definitely that ISB 2001 for multiple myeloma. If the trials keep showing good results, it could really shake things up.
It could be a game changer.
It could high risk, high reward, but it could make them a major player in oncology.
And their strategic partnerships,
Yeah.
from Pfizer to Hikma to those Chinese companies we discussed,
Uh-huh.
give them access to things they couldn't build on their own.
Exactly. Resources, expertise.
It's like they're building this network of collaborators.
So broaden their reach.
Okay, so good strategy, solid track record, strong partnerships.
Yeah.
But it's a complex industry.
It is.
Nobody's immune to challenges.
That's true. What are some of the headwinds Glenmark might face as they work towards these goals?
Well, one big one is pricing pressure,
Definitely, we've seen it across the whole industry.
especially in generics.
Right, as more companies enter, prices tend to drop, and that can hurt profits.
Makes sense.
Glenmark will have to be strategic about their pricing.
And show the value of their products.
Exactly.
And then there's the regulatory world.
Always changing.
Getting new drugs approved takes time and money,
It does.
and there's always a chance of delays.
Uh-huh. Which could affect their launches and their revenue.
And of course, we can't forget about technology.
Right, so much is changing so fast.
AI, big data, personalized medicine.
It's all transforming healthcare.
Glenmark will need to embrace these things and invest in their digital capabilities.
If they want to stay ahead of the game.
Right. But I also feel like Glenmark is pretty good at adapting.
I think so too. They've faced tough situations before.
Right.
And they've found ways to get through them.
They've got strong leadership, a resilient culture, and they're not afraid to make bold decisions.
Yeah, they're not just sitting back, they're constantly innovating, expanding, trying new things.
Which brings us to a bigger question.
What's that?
What role could Glenmark play in shaping the future of healthcare?
That's a big one, but an important one.
We're at a crossroads in healthcare.
We are.
Aging population, rising costs, the need for new treatments.
Yeah. So how can a company like Glenmark contribute?
Right.
Well, one way is by continuing to develop affordable generics,
That's essential for access to medicine.
especially in developing countries where budgets are tight.
Right.
By offering quality generics at lower prices, they're helping millions of people get the treatment they need.
And their move into innovative therapies, especially in areas like oncology,
Yeah.
could bring new hope to patients with serious conditions.
If treatments like ISB 2001 prove effective, they could dramatically improve outcomes and quality of life.
And they're also embracing digital technology.
Definitely.
Telemedicine, digital therapeutics, all these innovations that can make care better and more efficient.
It's like they're taking a big picture approach,
Right.
thinking not just about the drugs themselves, but about how they fit into the whole healthcare system.
It's about improving patient lives, expanding access, and ultimately contributing to a healthier world.
Exactly. They're not just a pharma company, they're a healthcare innovator.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with one final thought.
Okay.
We've spent a lot of time with numbers, trends, strategies.
It's been a data-heavy journey.
It has. But at the end of the day, the pharmaceutical industry is all about people.
It is.
The researchers who dedicate their lives to finding cures.
The doctors and nurses who provide compassionate care.
The people working behind the scenes to make sure these life-saving medicines get to those who need them.
It's a powerful reminder that business at its heart is about human connection.
And about the patients whose lives are touched by the work of companies like Glenmark.
Every pill, every injection, every new treatment represents hope, resilience, and the desire for a healthier future.
And Glenmark Pharmaceuticals is a part of that story, playing a role in improving the lives of millions around the world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Glenmark Pharmaceuticals.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and a new perspective on this company and its place in global healthcare.